I'm going to be recording my screen and I'm recording my audio and I'm recording any audio that comes from the Discord audio channel, the voice channel. If you don't want to be identified, you don't want to be part of the recording, keep everything inside the chat, the 330 simulation exam 2 chat, and I will respect that privacy in the context of I won't say your name, I won't say anything identifying in that space. But if you don't mind or if you don't care about your voice being recorded, you can still use the voice channel as normal. Um, so because of some YouTube latency stuff, we decided we'd try out today just doing going live in Discord. So you should be able to see my screen at this point. My text is or my font's pretty small in Visual Studio Code. So you should be able to see a Visual Studio Code environment. That's what I'm recording. Hopefully you can see that. So if I throw up anything on the screen, you'll be able to follow along that way. Hopefully you guys all saw the kind of lecture video and slides that I posted earlier. That's my goal, is that actually hopefully by the night before class I will have posted that YouTube video. Today it got up a little late for a lot of reasons, but my goal is to get those up before class starts, so you have enough time to watch them so that when we come to this class session you're ready to go, right? You've got everything you need. You have that content, you have the stuff we're getting into. I will be posting in the same channel, in this 330 Simulation Exam 2 channel. I'll be posting a link to this stream, so if you want to come back, or for whatever reason you couldn't join us, right, you can always come back and review this conversation. So other than that, I want to open it up and see if there's any questions, any comments, concerns, clarifications we can get into.
Where should we be seeing the VS Code screen?
Oh yeah, it's good question. So in Discord, I'm using a PC application version. I'm not in the web and I'm not on my phone. Obviously, that'd be wild to do this from my phone. In the chat channel where I see everyone who's in this current class talk channel, I have a live icon next to my name, and if you click that live, you should be able to join that stream, and you should be able to see the Visual Studio Code stuff. Does that help, Kobe? Do you get that? Is that working? Other people having issues seeing the stream? You can also throw something in the chat if there's an issue.
I can see it.
Cool. So, I mean, my goal for these class sessions, and when I say class, I'm using kind of air quotes, is essentially just to have space for all of us to come together to go over stuff that is either unclear. Essentially, it's like the portion of class in which you'd raise your hand and be like, hey, Scott, you did this thing wrong, or hey, Scott, I don't quite understand what that meant, or hey, Scott, right? Like that's what I want these sessions to be. So I don't necessarily have anything planned for this, right? All of my planning went into the lecture and all of that went into the presentation, but I want to make sure that there's still space for all of us to come together to make sure that we kind of are walking through this material, walking through this stuff at the same time. And so actually, we can start. The two homework problems. The first one was about binary search recursive calls, and Kobe pointed out that I made a little bit of a mistake here when I talked about having 12 total checks. There's actually only 10 total checks because I counted 60 and 5 twice. So, right, if those things aren't quite lining up for you, that's why. And then when we go to do the 2,000 element list, that's also going to be down 2, right? So that'll be 11 and 12 for the 2,000 calls. For the second part, asking about what can you say about the subscript value that you get back from a linear search or a binary search? Basic idea there is just that linear search is always going to be going from index 0 to index n. So that means that you're going to have to check every single element. So that means that you will be seeing the very first element, or if you're going backwards, the very last element. But in binary search, you have no guarantee about which side, right? Again, side is a little complicated, which side you're going to be accessing first. Any questions on homework? Does that sound okay? All right. Hearing nothing, we'll keep going. Hopefully you guys had a chance to watch that CGP Grey video on loading airplanes. I find it just very well done, first off, but then also just very, very interesting to think about, well, hold up, how can we run those simulations, right? How can we get to those answers as well? And so that's why I like using it as an example. And just the conversation around simulation is going to influence what we do for final projects. That's essentially what your final project is going to be, is take some simulation that you want to study, and then you're going to be implementing it using proper data structures. We'll obviously talk more about that as we get closer to the final project, but just as a heads up, that's kind of the frame and kind of the stuff we'll be doing. Any questions on exam 2? I'll be posting it as soon as this class is done. It's got a handful of kind of long form, not necessarily that long, but written out questions. But there's also some practical hands-on code that you have to do as well. Right, there's a whole conversation in here about when it's due, all that stuff. So it's going to be posted today. It'll be due on Thursday. Yeah. Any questions there? You guys are all just super quiet.
Is there supposed to be something on the screen right now? I'm not sure if it's my connection or if there's just nothing there.
Yeah, we'll get that stuff figured out. So, I just want to check. Andrew, you said it's working. Someone said it's up and running, right? Right now, you should be able to see exam structure.
Yeah, it's working.
Okay.
What I did.
Cool.
Once they join stream.
Yeah. So, for those that don't see anything, up at the top of the class talks, this is in Discord. There's gonna be my name, and it's gonna be lighting up green because I'm talking. Right next to me, it should say live. You have to click on that live, and then from there, you should be able to join the stream. And that stream should be, right now, just a PowerPoint slide. Does that help? Is that working?
Yes. Oh wait, it must be my connection. It keeps going in and out.
Cool. Okay. So this is actually why I'm going to be recording them, and then I'll upload them later. So if it's something that your connection goes bad or whatever, right? Well, I want to make sure you still get it, but at the same time, there's not a lot I can do to control that. So if you got questions, or I'm referring too much to something you can't see, throw something in the chat or speak up, and I'll talk more about that. Yeah, I know that right. I don't have control over all of your guys' computers, so I don't necessarily know the capability, and so I want to make sure that we can kind of cast a wide net and make sure everyone can get to all that info. But again, like I don't have too much planned for this, so if there's no questions or comments or things you want to talk about for exam 2, we can be done. Right, I feel we all got here and we don't got nothing to talk about.
Is there like a consensus on that survey you sent out like a few days ago?
About the exam?
No, just like how this class would be. I guess it is kind of exam related. Like, how this class would be going, like moving forward. Like, if you would have no exams or just do only projects.
Yeah. So my long answer is I would suggest watching the video on this lecture. The short answer is going to be in real small font. Let's zoom this in. what we're going to do is we're going to keep all of the exams, but we're going to change them significantly. The consensus was extremely polarized. So if you look at the data that you guys filled out, there were equal number of people that wanted to not have any exams and just go to straight projects, and there were equal number of people that said that they wanted to not do that, right? Because I asked you guys what was your veto, what was your options, but then what was your veto, and the vetoes ended up being the same number of people that were saying that they wanted to get rid of them, right? So what I said at the start of that survey was that it had to be pretty overwhelming for me to drastically change the syllabus, just because we already started with that syllabus, and so I don't want to necessarily unnecessarily change things if there's not a major push. So in light of that, what we're going to do is we'll still have the 3 more exams. We're still going to have them be that you can drop your lowest. However, for the exams, you are allowed to use your notes, you're allowed to use the book, you're allowed to use lecture slides, you're allowed to use the internet, you're allowed to use whatever you want. The only major restriction, well, there's kind of 2 major restrictions. The first one is that you cannot work together, so you have to work individually. There can be no cooperation, there can be no communication about the exam outside of, well, there just can't be any communication outside the exam, except for me, right? If you have a question, you can obviously talk to me and say like, hey Scott, I don't get this question, can you at least clarify what you're asking? That's fine. That's absolutely something you can talk about. And then the other restriction is going to be that if you use a source, you must cite it. So if you do end up going online to look for an answer to something, or you go online to look for like a piece of code to give you an inspiration to do the practical portion, you have to cite that, right? And the big thing with that citation is that it cannot be a copy and paste, right? If you say, hey Scott, here's your question about, why a hot dog is a sandwich, then you can't just like copy and paste someone else's work in for your answer. You have to do at least some amount of synthesis to show me that you understand it. You still have to cite it. You still have to say, oh, I didn't know, or you don't have to narrate this, but you can just say, here is where I got the information. Here is my synthesis of that information, right? So the same rules apply in terms of citation. The same rules apply in terms of academic honesty. Again, the only restriction being you can't talk to other people, and you have to cite your sources. In the exam, you have to electronically sign a statement that says that you understand all of this. So that outlines some more of those expectations. And those are always something that if you don't know either way, let me know and we can certainly address it. It's an easier conversation to have ahead of time of like, oh, hey, Scott, can I use this website? As opposed to me saying, hey, why did you do that? I can't give you points for that. Tough luck, right? Like that's a much harder conversation. So, yeah, just be clear and open about that. I don't know if that necessarily answers your question, but that's kind of a recap of what's in the lecture.
I have a question about group projects. Is how we're doing group projects covered in the lecture?
Yeah, it is. We can talk about it really quick. That's fine. Basically, what we're going to do is go back to normal size because that's too close. For the remaining 3 projects, we've got the projects that are coming up. By the way, this slide that has really small font, that's the table. I just posted this to Blackboard, so if you want to pull up an Excel version of this slide, you can. I've also uploaded these slides to Blackboard. We've got 3 more projects. We've got a project 5, which is going to be trees and heaps. That will be due on Friday, April 17th. We've got project 6, which is going to be about hash tables. That will be due Friday, May 1st. And then we've got project 7, which is sorting. That will be due on Friday, May 8th. Each of those projects are designed to be group projects. I'll be modifying them a little bit. But I'm going to leave it up to you in terms of if you want that to be a group project or not. The way we're going to do that is you have to tell me ahead of time, and I'll send an email asking for this. You'll have to tell me ahead of time if you want to be in a group. If you do, then I will put you into a pool. I will do the normal selection process, which is essentially like a randomized process, but I also ensure that you never work with the same people that you've worked with before, and then I will assign out those groups. If you don't want to work in a group, which is fine, you can work individually. That's entirely up to you in terms of how you want to approach those projects. The final projects will all be optionally group projects as well. However, I will allow you to select your own final project partners. Does that help? Does that answer your question, Andrew?
Yeah.
Cool.
My main concern is that my internet's fairly unreliable, so I don't think I'm gonna be. If I was in a group, it would be just. It might be difficult for me and my group partner to communicate and work together. So I might opt to.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna opt to do it solo, just because that way I don't have to rely on the internet. That's
Yep.
out of my control.
Yep, that's okay. And I get that. And that's part of why I don't mind relaxing this requirement, because of things like that, right? I also want to relax it because I also realize that with this transition, there's some people that don't have the same schedule anymore. There's some people that aren't on the same time zone, right? That's all fine. I don't want to make that a burden, right? I don't mind making that a burden when you're at school because the environment's very different, but in this context, it's very different. And so I don't mind relaxing that. The one thing I would suggest, Andrew, that you can try ahead of time is you can connect with someone. It can be me if you want, but I'd actually prefer you do it with people in the class and just test out doing that live share and see if it'll work. It's something that I don't know what the solution is going to be for group projects moving forward. I don't know what the technology is going to look like. I kind of want you all to decide for yourselves what that looks like. I don't necessarily want to say you must use this or you must not use this. And if it works for you, then go ahead, right? If it doesn't work for you, what you said before is fine, right? You don't have to justify why you want to do it solo. That's not the point. But at the same time, if you're concerned about missing out on that group project experience, right, we can still do some tests to see if that'll work. All right, so I got a question really quick about... Oh, Discord, don't do this to me. There we go. About if we choose to work alone in group projects, are we allowed to talk to someone else about the project, but not necessarily work with them? Or if we choose to work alone, is it strictly just you and we can only ask you questions? That's a good question, and I'm glad you asked that. Absolutely not, right? You can talk to whoever during group projects. Similar to how we were doing group projects before, there would be like 5 or 6 groups in the lab all working at the same time, and even though there were pairs, they were still talking amongst groups. That's fine, right? And same thing with like my CS1, CS2 groups, or not groups, but individual assignments, right? If it's an assignment, if it's a project, I almost expect you to work amongst yourselves, right? That's fine. I support that. The only kind of caveat and the only kind of aside I would give to that is still make sure that you are doing the work, right? Make sure that even though it's supposed to be an individual project, that you're not copying someone else's work and that you're still understanding the full amount of that work. I want to make sure that it's not like, hey, yeah, Scott is doing it individually, but Scott's also talking to Jude, and so therefore Scott just copies Jude's work, right? Like that's not how group projects work, and I don't want that to be how the individual projects work too. However, I do highly support collaboration amongst people. So yeah, that's a good question.
Hey Scott, can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up?
Just to clarify, I missed that one part when you said, so do you want us to like email or message you if we want to be in group project?
Oh, yeah. So what we'll do is before, like as I assign the I shouldn't say as I, probably a day or two before the project, I will send out an email just saying, hey, let me know either way. And if you want to opt in, then I'll add you to the groups. If you don't want to opt in, I'll probably assume that you're going to do it individually. But yeah, I'll send out emails about that. I'll mention it in these streams too to make sure that everyone knows what's up. The next project, we're not going to get started until this Friday. So we'll talk more about it on Friday.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah. Other questions, clarifications, things we can... Right, both from a technical side, you've got an exam coming up. We can do a review for the exam, or about class structure or about what to expect, that kind of thing.
I opt in for exam review.
Yeah, sure. So the exam is going to be covering everything from... There we go. Really from list down to recursion. I include vector in here because, right, when we're talking about sequential containers, we still need to talk about vectors. However, the main focus of this exam is going to be on lists, on DQs, on the adaptive containers, stacks and queues, and then some amount on recursion. The big thing that I want you to think about, and I want to be a little careful because I don't really think you need to quote unquote study for this exam, given that you have 3 days to do it, right? But more in the questions that you ask me right now, I care more about the understanding of the why, not necessarily the how, right? We can do examples really quick on like, okay, how do we insert into a linked list? And that's the thing I want you to know, but at the same time, when I'm writing the exam, I understand that you have the book and that question is pretty easily outlined in the book. So I'm not really going to ask a question like, hey, write out the algorithm for inserting into a linked list, because again, I know that you know that information. That doesn't mean you shouldn't understand it. You absolutely need to know why that's important and, why a list works differently than a DQ, right? That's going to be more along the lines of the questions that I'm going to ask are things like, if you're given a project requirement, which is the best data structure to use in that context? Or, right, when we're talking about recursion, why do we need to care about a base case, right? It's more those kind of questions that are the deeper understanding questions as opposed to the, what elements are inside of a linked list. That's more along the lines of what I'm asking is more of those high level concepts. Because again, I know that you can look up the STL definition of a linked list. I know you can look up, the pop back method for a DQ. So the questions are more along the lines of the connecting idea kind of stuff. The programming part of it, it's 50-50. Half of it is these conceptual questions. Half of it is programming assignment. The programming assignment is pretty open-ended, but that also means that the solution is pretty open-ended as well. It's not nearly as constrained as like the recursion problem that we're doing right now of the 8 queens and the blobs. It's not nearly as constrained as that. It's a lot more broad, and it's a lot more about your understanding as opposed to it being, solve this very specific problem. Man, it's so weird to just talk to a empty screen. Hopefully this is helping. I can keep going. If there are other questions, that can direct what I'm talking about.
Scott, when is the recursion project due?
It's due today sometime. I really don't like having time-stamped due dates just because that leads to people trying to push those time-stamped due dates. So what I will say is tomorrow, Maddie and I will start grading them. My tomorrow starts pretty early, so I wouldn't push that too late, but I will get it done by the time you go to bed tonight. The other thing I mentioned, I'll reiterate it here though. I'm going to try really hard to make sure that I'm including the due dates of assignments with the assignments, more so than I did during the year. I just know that can be a little confusing in terms of, wait, when is this actually due? So just a heads up. If you can't find the due date, let me know, and I'll either include it or reiterate it or make sure that you know what's going on. Other questions, clarifications, stuff for the exam? Cool. Okay. Well, I don't need to take up more of your guys' time. If you feel like peacing out, you're welcome to. I'll be around for a while if people need help with whatever. Yeah, and again, I'll be posting all of these online as well, and so if you want to refer back to this, you're welcome to. I'll be posting it as one of the pinned messages in this chat. Cool. Okay. We'll talk with you guys later. But again, if you got questions or concerns or need help, I'll be around.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
So I saw the feedbacks for the projects. And then like project one, it says something about like extra credit awarded later by you. What
Oh,
exactly does that mean?
cool. So what that means is that Maddie went through and graded it, but she didn't want to make a judgment call on the extra credit. So
Oh, okay.
that means that I need to go back and check it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's something that I will when I go back to check it. It's marked in the spreadsheet that Maddie and I use to track everything. It's just that we're trying to manage a lot of other things at the moment, so that's a lower priority for me. That's
That's totally understandable.
yeah, and it's something that I will push a comment back to your project. So actually, probably what I'll just tell you right now is I'll just send you an email when I've gone back and regraded it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Cool. Well, all right. Good luck on the test.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. See ya.